get this puppy going.
Let's talk about the Baja 1000 because we just won the Baja 1000. I don't even know what to say right now. Pretty speechless that we actually won the Baja 1000. It happened a couple days ago and it's still been something, it's been so hard to process. But today's video, I'm gonna walk you through kind of all the steps leading up to it, the entire race of my section, Bryce's entire section, and then ultimately putting us up on top and us winning the Baja 1000. So yeah, pretty wild. Baja's, this has been something I've been dreaming of since I was just a young buck. So to get it at my age, this early in my career, it's pretty special. To be honest, I've dreamed of it, but it almost didn't seem like it was that achievable yet. Like I knew I could do it, but at the fact that I did it now, it's like, holy cow, we actually did it. Yeah, let's talk about the race. So this year's Baja 1000, started in Ensenada, finished in Ensenada. Very similar to last year's loop. Ultimately, last year, if you watched it, I teamed up with Bryce Menzies, same as this year, and we made it 12 miles. It was like the perfect storm. Everything was aligning, and then at mile 12, we had a catastrophic mechanical failure. That just happened. It wasn't like my fault, it wasn't Bryce, it just happened. Ultimately, it took us out of the race, 12 miles into the Baja 1000. So this year, they come back. It's a very similar course. Bryce has been out on medical. I've had an up and down year. Bryce calls me and goes, hey, you want to do this thing again? And all right, let's do it. But there's definitely, there's some, you're timid inside and you're kind of like, man, last year didn't go so well, but we knew we had it. We had the team to beat, just Baja luck wasn't on our side. So now going into here, the planning, logistics, pre-running, it was a lot simpler. For me, I only had about 15 miles of new stuff to pre-run. A lot of it we had already pre-run in the past. Stuff changes, so it's really important to pre-run it all again. But there is stuff that, it's very similar. You're seeing the same stuff, you're pitting in the same places, so that part was very easy. So pre-running for me was pretty simple. I went down for a couple days before SEMA, and then I had to come home, do a bunch of SEMA stuff, which is a big car show, and then came back and finished my pre-running. I did all of my pre-running in a UTV and my luxury pre-runner, and I guess I actually did. I ran the last day, I ran part of the start in the trophy truck behind me, which is my trophy truck. A lot of people were confused. We did run Bryce Menzies' trophy truck, but it had my number on it, number 94, with the driver record, Chris Raporti. So that's why there was some confusion. But yeah, this is my trophy truck. We didn't race it. It's pretty prepped and ready to race for our next race, which is very exciting. We'll announce soon. I'll be racing all of Baja next year, but the next race next year will not be a Baja race. It'll be in the US. It'll be before Baja 250. So pre-running and whatnot all went pretty smooth. We had a really good week. Everything was really great in pre-running. Couple small issues on the UTV. My poor UTV is getting to like 8,000 miles, so it's kind of on its last leg. The pre-runner was super proud of it. It ran great all week. No major issues. I buried it in the rocks, but that was kind of Christopher's own doing, so what do you expect? And the rocks in a two-wheel drive, 7,000, 8,000 pound lug. You get stuck when they're wet in the morning from the waves breaking on them. The only thing we had in pre-running is we were yard sailing trailers. We broke a trailer pretty much every day. I normally tow one huge, large trailer. I decided to go to two smallers because the roads are a little narrower down south, trying to be smart and safer. Well, it ended up every day one of those trailers failed. Whether we ripped axles off, leaves off, like tires falling off. It was just one thing after another. So big changes happening to the trailer game here. Let's jump to qualifying. Qualifying was on Tuesday. It was at Rancho Nelson, which is a very short coursey style in the beginning, and then it gets very technical, silty at the end. The silty part at the end wasn't ideal. We were one of the last trucks to go in the qualifying lineup. For me, last year I qualified first, so I knew I had what it took. We had just made a bunch of changes to Bryce's truck though, so it was kind of like, all right, let's go feel it out. And I know a lot of people are like, well, you and Bryce have almost identical trucks, you know, Mason all-wheel drive, Mason all-wheel drive. They probably drive identical. They don't. They're not even close, which I know is hard to believe. And yes, they are close. In the big scheme of things, they are very close. But at the level we're tuning these things and the level we're driving these things, every little thing makes such a big difference. Drivability, comfort, handling, braking, cornering. So there's so many different variables. So for us jumping back and forth between trucks, it's different. And so for me, jumping into Bryce's truck, the first couple corners during qualifying were a bit of a mess. I was struggling. I couldn't hear my Kim. I kind of got a push. And I just couldn't settle in. I was very on and off the throttle, kind of sawing at the wheel. But then I was kind of able to settle in. And at that point I was like, okay, I just lost a bunch of time. I have to make up some time. But we still have to race the Baja 1000 after. So be calm, cool, collected. And so yeah, during the first time split, I think I was 2 seconds down. In the end, I put 3 seconds on Toby. But then Alan came in and I think closed that gap to 2 seconds. But for me, I was very happy with that. It was a pretty up and down qualifying. I didn't feel really good, and then I picked up the pace and I kind of went too far where I was getting sloppy, and then finally by the end I kind of settled in. But you know, we only had 4 minutes to figure this all out. So in the end, you're like, oh man, I don't know how we did, and they're like, hey, you got it again. And for me, I was like, boom, first. But at the same time, I didn't know if I really wanted to be first. If you look back in the history books of every time I've qualified first, we broke at mile 12. I crashed 3 corners in. Little known fact, a lot of people didn't know, I've never led a Baja race. I've never been first on the road for more than 12 miles. And the first 12 miles are very closed off. They're in the mountains. People can't really be up there. So for me, the pressure was on now. I'm like, man, I've screwed up before when I've led. I have the nerve-wracking part of leading. When you're leading, you're setting the pace. Everyone's following you. Everyone can chase you and pace you. And it's just different. You're clearing the roads. It's a lot more dangerous. Fortunately for us, we had 2 helicopters. We had our helicopter, and then we had the Menzies helicopter. So that part definitely made me feel a little bit better. But yeah, you're clearing the road. We encountered coyotes, cattle, horses, people, spectators stuck on course in in their pickup trucks. So that's some of the stuff you encounter when you're first on the road. I was nervous, I'm not gonna lie, the last couple days getting up to the race. Starting first, trying to redeem myself, and I wanted to go win this Baja 1000. And for me, when you have a guy like Bryce Menzies, especially with his sponsors like Red Bull, there's a lot of pressure. I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of a mental case for a couple days and was just trying to keep it cool and just remind myself, this is what your whole career is worked up for. You're prepared. This isn't like you were just thrown into it yesterday. But when you're sitting there at night and whatnot, you're like, man, how'd I end up here? I don't know if I'm ready for this. So let's talk about race day. Race day, the weather was calling for heavy rain a lot of the day. For us being first on the road, that is the last thing we want. Being first on the road, you're a sitting duck. They can catch you, especially if there's no dust. And you know, for them to try to push up on you, they're hoping you make a mistake. So for us, not having dust was a huge worry of mine. Fortunately enough, race morning came around. It was raining. It had been raining kind of all night. It was kind of more of a drizzle though, so it wasn't bad. And ultimately in the end, it really wasn't that wet. We didn't get much rain. As soon as the race started, the rain stopped, and everywhere just outside Ensenada was dry for my section. But for me, setting the pace in the beginning, it was really important to have some dust, and I didn't want rain. Dealing with rain is not fun. So fortunately enough, the rain stopped. So we start the race. What was pretty cool this year, and I've never done it, it's a thing historically, is starting in the wash. So we actually start in downtown Ensenada. We leave the start line, make a left, and we're in like a 37-mile speed zone, and then you drop into a wash, and it's game on, and you're racing out of town through this wash. The wash was a little bit of moisture, a little bit of trash, and you know, I was the first one to go through it, so you're like, man, I hope there's no puddles. Traditionally in the past, it was pretty common for the locals to flood under the bridges, because we have to dig under the bridges because the bridges aren't super high. So they'd flood it with water, so we'd go in and get all muddy and stuff. So for me, I was like, man, I really don't want to get covered in mud and water. And I'll be honest, the water down there is like in the wash is really gross. So fortunately though, first time leaving the wash, really cool because there's tons of fans. The wall, you know, everywhere, there's people everywhere. There's people on the bridges, and you're just ripping out of town. Rip out of town. Everything was clear. Didn't get muddy. Didn't get wet. So I was a very happy camper. And it kind of gives you a little thing, get loosened up, and then you have a speed zone that then takes you the rest of the way out of town, and then you jump into kind of some graded roads, and you leave town out by El Tule, and then you jump into Rancho Nelson, which Rancho Nelson is where we qualified, to a lot of back and forth. And it's kind of trippy because right in the beginning, we start a minute apart. So we're all running each other down, and all these switchbacks, you can see each other. So you're like, hey, Alan, long time no see, just saw you at the start. And you know, at the start, everyone's like, oh, are you gonna make it to Ojos? Yes, I'm gonna make it to Ojos. I'm gonna try to, I promise. It's not I don't wanna not make it. So get out of there, get out of Rancho Nelson, all smooth. And at this point, I gotta cruise, I gotta be smart. It's a long race ahead. Leave there. Once you leave Rancho Nelson, you head up towards Ojos. Nice graded roads, a little bit of technical stuff towards the end, some ups and downs. Then touch Ojos, and then we kind of take the way. I'm not a huge fan of it, but we touch Ojos, and then we jump into, you kind of bounce back towards Ensenada for a tiny bit, and we go through a section of Jose G's ranch. Jose G's the race director, and he has a ranch up there, and it's super technical. It's very like switchbacky. There's one corner that is, we barely make it around in the trophy trucks. And if you do mess up, like you're either gonna get high centered or you're gonna have to back up and kind of 3 or 4 point turn this thing. And these things don't like to go into reverse easily and stuff like that. So if you do that, it's a big screw up. So you're in there and it's beginning of the race, you're intimidated. You're like, oh man, I'm not settled in yet, and you're doing that. So get through that, clear through that, which I was super happy, and start heading out towards, you head out, I guess, south, and then to cut over to Europan. That section is, there's some graded roads, there's some really rough, chewed up course that we've just seen over and over with some silt and big whoops and rocks, and it's pretty nasty to be honest. So for there, I was like, just get to Europan, get through this, calm down. Even if they catch you behind you, they're not gonna drive through your dust. But in your head, they're catching me, and you know, you get a time split. Hey, Alan put, you know, at that point, right away he put 30 seconds on me, which I expected. I was on cruise control. And then going through Europan, I think I put 15 seconds back. So he was running like 40 seconds, 45 seconds behind me. Totally cool with me. For us, we can change a tire out in the field by ourselves in about 45 seconds. So we'd really like to have about a minute and 20 to have some buffer. So if Mike Kim fumbles the tire around, or if we're in a bad spot, we get a place to get. So for us, I knew Alan was gonna try to keep that gap less than a minute all day, because he knew that. We're racers. We all know, we're all playing the same game. I kept just reminding myself, hey, just be smart, drive just to the max. You're the leader. They're not going to catch you. We still have 800 and something miles to go. Don't be dumb. Get through there, drop in down into Europan, which Europan, there's ups and downs, there's blind rises, ruts, silt. Europan's nasty. It's brutal, but I was kind of able to zone in there and just kind of maintain that pace. Got through it flawlessly, no mistakes, not hitting rocks. You know, that was my big thing all day. Let's keep Mike Kim and myself in the truck all day. We don't want to get out, because that means we're changing a flat. That means we're dealing with some issue. Get through Europan, which, you know, at that point, it's your first kind of real speed zone to like, okay, this is it. You're talking to the team. They're like, hey, Alan's 45 seconds, Toby's a minute 20. You know, it was rough. We were all the top four. You know, you're me, Alan, Toby, McMillan, which was Rob McCachran driving, and then you had Tavo. Everyone was just stacked up. And then you had Dan McMillan with Andy McMillan driving right behind it. And we were all within like on corrected time, we were all within like 40 seconds. We were on just, everyone was stacked up. But physically, we were all within a couple minutes, which is crazy. You know, you're like, oh man, this is gonna be a fun race. So go through that, speed zone through Santo Tomas, jump off in Santo Tomas, which is a beautifully graded road that takes you out to the coast. Super fun, fast, flowy. You're ripping. It's basically like a rally road. Bryce's truck works really good there. Mike Kim's notes were on point, so we were just driving a 1,200 horsepower trophy truck on a graded dirt road, 4-wheel drive. It's pretty awesome, not gonna lie. And you're kind of just pointing, shooting. And you're trying to be conscious, you know, you gotta take care of the tires and stuff and be smart, be smooth. These roads, they get wide, they get narrow, so that part's a little technical, but that's why we pre-ran. Once you get out towards the coast, it gets a little bit tighter and you're going through some kind of like, it's graded roads, but they've kind of deteriorated and they're a little bit tighter, a little bit narrower. So just being smart through there, using the 2-track. Right in there, unfortunately, we had a coyote jump in front of us. I checked up, he ran across the road, and then right when I passed him, his homie jumped out and like, he literally just like jumped into the hood of our truck. RIP to Mr. Coyote, I'm sorry. It was very quick. Because Mike Kim always jokes when he sees the coyote, he says, "Where's the Roadrunner?" So he was literally like, "Where's the Roadrunner?" And I'm like, boom! I was like, "Oof, we just got this. We got a second coyote." He's like, "What?" I'm like, there was another one. We missed the first one. The other one didn't quite make it." But you're going through there, then you jump out onto the coast, like where you're on the cliffs of the coast. It's super pretty. You're kind of just winding across the coast and start making your way south towards Orindia. It's a really fun road. It's really cool. The sights are amazing. It's kind of hard to believe you're racing along it. It's so pretty. People are camping. There's a lot of cool fans out there. So haul butt down to there, hop into Orindia. Orindia is a speed zone for a little, and then you hook a left, and it's big whoops. And this is where the race course starts to get a little nasty. At that point, we were all still tight, and I really wanted to get a little more of a buffer with Alan. The possibilities of flat tire or something like that were higher towards Orindia. So, but like I said, we're setting the pace. We got to be smart. So run through Orindia, which the whoops in Orindia Wash right now, oh my gosh, miserable, big, huge, brutal. But got through that. Then you start heading into the mountains, which are just outside, like I guess you'd call them like the west mountains of San Vicente, where you're kind of winding back and forth. There's some really chewed up roads in here with jagged rocks. Really kind of an area, if you're gonna get a flat tire, it's gonna be in here. So for me, it was be smart, smooth, just get through it. And like, don't be dumb, but also maintain enough because we had a pit coming up soonish, so you had to be smart through that. So we did all through that. We had a shock setup that I was really happy with. It made this ride a lot more comfortable. It was still pretty brutal. At the pace we were going, I couldn't believe it. I'll keep saying this throughout the video. The pace all day was so fast. We were all kind of just pushing forward. Every time I'd pick it up, everyone would pick it up. So you're like, man, guys, we still got 800 something miles to go. Let's chill. Well, can we all like wave the white flag real quick and like take a breather? But no. And I know everyone else is gonna blame me, but I was just trying to keep them off my tail. So run through there, jump into Collinette, past Alan and Pudia's pit. So at that point I knew he was gonna pit, and we still had another 15 miles before our pit. So pick up time. This is where you gotta gain time to try to make sure Alan doesn't pit past us in the pits. Because he was gonna pit early and then try to run us down and time it perfect, so when we were pulling into the pit, he would pass us. So jump into the Collinette Wash, and the whoops were insane in Collinette Wash. I literally felt like I was hitting 4-foot curves, man. I was getting the wind knocked out of me. It was brutal. Yeah, and at this point, you're like, I gotta take care of the truck. I gotta cruise. But they're like, hey, we need time. Alan's pulling out of the pit. You're like, oh man. So ran down out Collinette Wash. Then, which was kind of annoying, the farmers, I guess they didn't want dust running through some part of it, so they put a huge sprinkler. They put all this hand pipe or like hard pipeline out, and they were watering it a ton, and we were just getting soaked. And we were doing like 120, just getting sprayed in the face with water, and you're just like, at the end of the Collinette Wash, you end up at the ocean, make a left on the ocean, fast, really fast roads, and then right at Cuatro Casas, which is like I don't know, I guess it's a hostel or Airbnb basically, and there's some huge silt beds, and I kind of debated all week. So you could run straight down the middle of the silt beds, which was, for us in the all-wheel drive trophy trucks, isn't a worry, but they're deep, big holes, dusty. Or you could hit the VCP, run to a graded road, get in the graded road and then jump back. And I kind of debated, but the problem is with the graded road is there's fans everywhere. So you're like kind of, did we do it? Did we not? The helicopter calls it's clear. So I'm like, I think I'm gonna do it. And then I end up missing the exit out of the silt beds. So we went straight down the heart of the silt beds, which you're like, oh man. It was super huge holes and silt's coming over the hood. And you're like, I guess this isn't the best for the beginning of a race, but get through those silt beds with no issue. Looks cool. Video guys were probably pumped to see us come through. At that point, back down the coast, super high speed, and we're coming to our pit. So I am just, we're doing like 130, just ripping. And it was pretty cool to hear because during the race, if you watched our live stream, which if you didn't watch our race live, for future races, download the app that's called Racing Redefined. You can go on there, it has all our tracking, timing, and then also our in-cars. What's cool is about our in-car, we have telemetry and stuff, so you can see our speed, but then you can also see my heart rate. At this point, we're coming up into the pit. I had been pushing, knew I had a little bit of time, but the pit had to be perfect still. My guys were awesome, they killed it. The pit was, I think, 31, 32 seconds, really fast. Overall, very happy with what the guys did. They were smooth, calm, cool, collected, just like we practice all the time. So, pull out of the pit, but at that point, Alan is kind of close to us, so you got to pick up the pace again. Pull out of the pit, you're right on the coast, and then you hook a left, and you go through some farm fields. These farm fields are a little intimidating. They're really fast. They're not intimidating, but really fast, but it kind of gets, it's hard to read them because the terrain, and you're like left, right, and so just making sure you get through there. But then you hop onto a section where it's pretty scary. There's like a 40, 50 foot cliff, and the waves are breaking against that cliff. And then right here, there's a fence line. So you're literally on a road that's like just the width of a trophy truck, and you're ripping, and it's not like a smooth road. It's a lot of ups and downs and like off camber stuff, and you're ripping, and it's just like one of those things like, man, if I screw up, I'm gonna clip the fence and then ultimately probably go flying off this cliff. And it's pretty cool. I mean, the helicopters are literally flying right next to us, sometimes even below us. So you're looking at the heli guys, you're like, hey, sorry, just try not to die. But you get through there, a little bit more speed zone. Then we drop down onto these cobblestone rocks like I got stuck in pre-running. These cobblestone rocks are just, they're miserable. They're slippery and they're just hard on the vehicle, so you kind of feel bad. But I came into the cobblestone rocks and I was in one too tall of a gear by accident. I really thought we could kind of carry it a little more through there. But so I went to downshift, and then it didn't want to downshift. These transmissions are very temperamental. You got to be smart with them and plan your shifts. So we're in there, and then you drop into the cobblestones, and so I'm like, all right, we got to just go, like light it up. That's the one big benefit, is we have so much torque and whatnot. And like right when I just like gun it, it like whoa, and like I feel the trophy truck sinking in the rocks. And at this point, you're like, oh man, the pressure's on. But you get through that, and then luckily, like the guys were, Alan and them, they were closing on me, but it wasn't like they were knocking on my back door. The problem is right around this area, there's not a ton of dust, so they have an opportunity to close. At that point, you jump off the beach for a second, and then we run this graded road that takes us back to the beach. And I screwed up on this graded, it's a hard left, like past 90, then it drops us onto like a sandy beach. And it's a nice graded road, it's huge. And I came in there, and I kind of just mistimed the corner, and then was like, oh shoot, I need to turn like now, and did a full like Pro 4 reverse entry. We're coming out to the corner like this. I like hucked it and was sliding into the corner backwards, which is just not a pleasant feeling in these things. They're so big and boaty, and I was like, oh my gosh, please don't catch, please don't catch. But we're literally like entering the corner like fully backwards, like what the? I'm like trying to get it to like the RPMs up so stuff doesn't catch. Super sketchy. Didn't mean to do that. If you see that video and it looks sick, I did mean to do it. But ultimately, I was shitting myself. I'm sure Mike Kim was going, what's going on? That point, you jump onto the beach where it's really cool. You're actually on the beach. You're kind of dodging the waves. Hook a left off there, and from there on, it's kind of, you're in like some flatlands, like where the tide kind of comes up. So it's very hard pack and very high speed, winding through all that, just ripping down the coast towards south. We're parallel in San Quintin at this point. Then you jump into like these sand dunes, back onto some graded roads, and then a speed zone that gets us through town, and then crosses the highway and start heading up into the mountains. This is around race mile 200. At this point, this is where I'd say the course gets real. Like, not real, but like shit gets real. It's really rocky, it's really technical, and a lot of opportunities to screw up. So we get through the speed zone. At this point, everyone's still stacked up. I think I maybe had like a 50-second lead on Alan around here. And we're talking, when I'm talking about these leads, we're talking about physical. So 50 seconds is not that. You know, we go by, start a timer, 50 seconds later, Alan goes by, 30 seconds later, Toby goes by. Like, it was stacked. At this point, you kind of, you make your way through some farm fields, and then you jump into all this 2-track, and it's just rocky. It's all rocks about this big, but there's just enough of them, but there's just not enough of them that it's very high speed, and you are ripping through this 2-track. There's all these cactus kind of, and it's very just, it's intimidating because rocks are moving all week during pre-running. There's some boulders. I had actually moved some huge boulders in there that I just didn't feel comfortable with because I knew after we qualified first, we were going to be the first ones there. So you're like, you know, let's just get rid of these things. So flying through there, get a time split. Hey, Alan's catching you. And I'm like, mentally, you're like, he can't pass you. But also mentally, you're like, oh, I can't let him catch me. So you're kind of, but I'm like, hey, just don't get a flat. You'll make up time in the next section. This is where you have to be smart. This is where it's really gonna show if you fall under the pressure. So I just was cruising, being smart through here. Came around a corner, some locals, which I was really pissed off about, had piled huge stacks of rocks about this high all across the road, and like literally the point, like we were hitting them with like our front, not our front bumper, but literally the A-arms and like our front skid plates. We were plowing these rock piles because it was narrow. We couldn't get around them, and we're doing like 90, and then you see them and you're like trying to lock up. And the problem is, like when you're trying to slow these things down and you're in these tight sections, you got to be real careful because they'll slide and tag a rock, flat tire. But didn't do that, so I whoa the truck down as much as I can. And at this point, you just got to hit the rocks. There's nothing you can do. And you're just like, cuckoo, cuckoo. And the front end, you know, we're worried about, but more worried about like knocking out like our third member or our drive shaft. So you're just like trying to like position smart, but they had piled so many piles of rocks. So I was not a happy camper, and it was like rows of them. Like it wasn't just like one hit. It was like they piled them everywhere. And yeah, you're like trying to dodge them as best you can, but you're literally hitting them in the front end. That's how tall and these are big rocks that they had stocked. And then you go another 50 feet and there's all the locals laughing at you, waving. I was not a happy camper. I said some fine words to them and gave them some nice hand signals because I was not happy. Yeah, I was not happy. I've heard the reports that I was expressing my feelings on the live stream. That's the thing now on live stream, everyone can hear my in-car audio, so they can hear Bryce and Mike, Kim and I talking. So get through that. At that point, then you drop into this canyon where it is super rocky, windy, lots of opportunity to make a mistake. At that point, Alan had caught me pretty heavy. He had closed the gap. I think it was down to like 25 seconds, 30 seconds. He was really close. We're switchback and I could actually see him in the switchbacks, but I just kept reminding, Mike Kim was like, you just need to calm down and be smart. Be smart. They cannot pass you. So you got through all that without a flat tire, which I was like mind blown. Got through there. At that point, it kind of opens back up. It's another 2-track, very rocky. Get through all that. Very intimidating. Then you jump on some graded roads and a little bit of wash, and then you kind of head back up this switchbacky mountain thing, which was super whooped out, and then again, kind of narrow roads. These were kind of fast and flowy, but there's a lot of big boulders on the left and right, and some just like this area is just very rocky. There's rocks everywhere that you're kind of worried about. And then at this point, you're getting into more cactus areas. So there's a lot of cactuses. Big cactuses right on the edge of the tree, you know, road and stuff, so you're worried about those too. Get out to there, then you hop on a nice graded road that takes you out to the highway. Get that out there, get out to the highway. A little bit of a highway section through there. On the highway section, we're cruising, it's a 60, kind of getting our cool, and it was pretty crazy. A wild horse ran right in front of us on the highway section, but you kind of saw it, he like jumped over, and then all of a sudden he was running, we're like, kind of just missed him, and kept going. It was pretty funny because the chase guys were right behind us. They're like, did you see that horse? We're like, yeah, we saw that horse. We jump on the highway. Our pit's right there. Pit was super good. The guys were on it. Smooth, cool, collected. Did that. Removed our front grill area so we had lights because at this point it's getting later in the day. So if we did need lights, they pulled off all the light covers and start heading out. this beginning part, a little bit of techie stuff, and then we jumped on a nice graded road for about, I don't know, probably 15 miles or so. A big, long graded road. Super fun, fast, flowy, lots of ups and downs. What was tough about this one was pre-running, we were all going pretty slow because there was some local traffic and stuff. So now on race day, you're just clicking gears. A lot of times you're going over 100 and you're like, man, I really hope our notes are good. And because right on the edge of all these, there's big boulders, but then there's also huge cactuses that are like this thick. And if you hit one of those, it's like hitting a rock. It's not pleasant. Get through all of that, and then all down there, we're just kind of maintaining. Then you hook a left onto this new section. There's a lot of VCPs in here, so we couldn't really venture off. Really had to stay on course. But it just had gotten pretty deteriorated during pre-running. It was very silty and stuff, which was gonna play into my advantage because it's gonna make a lot of dust. So running through there, one of those corners I misjudged a little and smoked a cactus right over the hood. Got cactus all on my left arm, got cactus on Mike Kim. We weren't too happy about that. And it was like they're like the small little choyas. They like are very itchy when they get in you. So you're like trying to do that, and like you want to reach and grab them and pull them off, but then they're in your hands. So you're like trying to kind of get them out without knocking them or breaking them off, whatever. So get through there. All of this section is pretty tight, technical, but like not as rocky as the past section. So it's a little more fast, flowy, feels good. Then kind of drop down into this big valley, big wash. In the wash, then you exit the wash and there's some huge silt beds. Running through the silt beds, we had kind of planned a bunch of different routes through there. They were big, but we had to go through them because of VCPs. We missed the entrance of our main line that we wanted to be because there was a motorcycle. At this point, we're starting to catch the motorcycles. So that wasn't ideal, so we missed that. So then I was kind of jumping back and forth trying to get back onto my line. Ended up basically just going straight down the middle of the silt bed, which isn't the most ideal, but we're in an all-wheel drive trophy truck. Get through that part and then make a left and start hitting some more silt beds. Flying through the second silt beds, we see a cow out in the distance. I'm like, is that a cow? Yeah, he's in race course. So we're like, all right, let's be smart. At that point, right then, the helicopter goes, cows, cows, cows. And right at that point, a whole herd of cows jumps into the race course. We luckily, because we had been seeing that other cow, we had checked up a little, but he was still, a couple hundred yards out. These jumped out right in front of us. So we locked up, and we're literally but the problem is there's a fence line right here. So they jump in front of us because they're spooked, but then they can't keep going. So they're running down the race course. And we're on their we're right on their behind them, revving, trying to get them to go out of the way. And then there's more coming out of the bushes. They're going in the bushes, in and out of the bushes. So that part was really close. Good call on our helicopter guys for letting us know. I mean, it all happened so fast, but eventually all these cows got out of the way. But it slowed us down a bit. Get through those silt beds, and then it's kind of a nice graded road out towards. At this point we're getting towards Catavenia, but at this point it gets super. As soon as you clear this graded road, it gets tight and technical and kind of just, not ideal. But we had put a little bit of time on Alan, so I was feeling good, and I knew once it got tight and technical, the sun was starting to go down, the dust was going to be bad. We just had to be smart, and these guys were going to struggle behind us because of the dust and the sun. Get through there, drop down into this technical stuff, and this part's different. So there's a lot of, you're in these sand washes that are very rocky. There's a lot of rocks about this big scattered throughout these sand washes, and these sand washes are narrow. These little boulders blend in with the sand, so you're really trying to be smart, and at this point the light's kind of glaring, so you're really trying to read. Getting through all that, being smart. You jump up on plateaus every once in a while. Those are a little more rugged. Then you drop back into the wash, kind of being smart through there. At that point, we kind of had a line where we thought we could swing wide, and we clipped the VCP, and then we go on to our line, which was smoother. We hooked a hard and just drove through all this cactus to make sure we got the VCP. It was not pleasant. Mike, Kim, and I were covered in these big cactuses with these huge, pointers all in. I had one just stuck in my arm. There was one all down my shoulder. And then your arm's going numb, it's itchy, it's pretty miserable. So Do that, which I was just not happy about. Yeah, it was not ideal. So then you're dealing the last bit of your section with that. Get through all that stuff, really just back and forth, and then you hook a hard right and you're going straight into the sun. The sun's in your eyes, so you're trying to drive without hitting rocks. The sun is just glaring. I had a clear shield on because it was gonna get dark. So you're like, oh, this is tough, this is miserable. Whatever, we get through it, cross the highway, and then you're kind of in this more technical rock stuff. I know I keep saying that. Wind through there, and then last part of my section, highway zone, and then drop down Fred's Tractor Trail. Fred's Tractor Trail, kind of a very technical, huge cliffs. Literally, you're like rubbing your left tire, and then there's a cliff on your right tire. And it's pretty intimidating, and there's big rocks. So you're kind of like, rock crawling down this thing. But it's scary, but the first part's pretty easy. But then there's this one left-hand corner that is very easy for your front end to slide off. And then you are stuck, and it's miserable, and you gotta it's not pleasant. So I make the left off of that, which is super, I make the left, it's all clear, but then it gets really steep, and you're kind of just sliding down and just trying to be smart. At this point, we had a minute and a half on Allen. So I was really happy. So at that point I was like, all right, let's just get through Fred's. Even if they catch us a little, we'll have a little bit of buffer for our driver change, which was coming up next. So we get through Fred's. Once you get to the bottom of Fred's, you're in this huge, like, bouldery wash where you're literally rock crawling, where you are planning your whole thing. You're putting a tire on that rock, so then this tire hits that rock and it misses the diff. Like, it's very, like, kind of, it's intimidating through there. It's shadowy at this point, so you're trying to be smart. And it's the last part of my stint. I'm like, I don't want to. We're in a great position. We're leading the Baja 1000. We have a minute and a half lead. Don't screw up. So get through that, which was awesome. And at that point, that was the end of my stint. Jump on the highway, and we had a 60 mile an hour highway zone. So I was in the highway for 1 hour total. And at the end of that, I gave the truck off to Bryce, which is always scary. I spent the whole highway zone picking cactus out of the seats and out of the floor and throwing them out, so Bryce didn't get in and sit in a cactus and have to deal with that for his entire. Pull into the pit. Pit was awesome there. We did the driver change, which, the driver change is pretty gnarly. Like, for us, me and Bryce are different heights, so the seat goes up and down, so I put the seat all the way down, but then I had to take my steering with me, and then he had to bring his own and put it in. Yeah, there was a lot of moving parts. Changed all 4 tires, did some other stuff. Smooth, I want to say it was like right around a minute. As soon as that's over, it's pretty crazy because you get out of the truck, you're all hopped up. You're like, you want to hug everyone, talk to everyone. Well, pit's over, you're like, thanks. And literally as soon as the truck leaves, we were gone. We were out of that pit in under 30 seconds probably. It was like, grab your stuff. I still had my helmet on, jumped in a chase truck, and at that point, I jumped into chase 1, which was with Jimmy, our crew chief, and we started chasing the race truck. So he'd get out, you're like, oh man. At this point, we're in San Felipe's side. So for Bryce, I'll keep it brief with Bryce's section because I didn't drive it, but Bryce had pre-ran all this. It was all dark at this point. It went dark during that speed zone. So his entire section was going to be towards the dark. He right away put we had about a minute lead. He put about 2 minutes on these guys, so it's pretty cool. 2-3 minutes, started to kind of open up the lead, get into a safer spot. The night was playing in a good factor. The dust was sitting, and he had just pre-ran it. He was pretty confident there. So he starts running all his section. We're kind of just chasing along, seeing him as much as we can, and he was locked in. We're watching him on the live stream. Everything was going smooth. Runs all the way up. Everything's good. The guys behind him were pushing a lot harder, trying to catch him now that he'd put a gap, so it was perfect. We were sitting in a great position. Makes his way up towards the La Ventana area. He ended up getting a flat, so he lost a little bit of his gap, but then kind of put some of it back on. And then we're still first physically in the lead. Comes back down towards San Matias area. He started hearing a clunk, which for us wasn't ideal. He started hearing a pretty heavy clunk in the front end. For us, we thought it's probably the front diff or an axle or something, a CV. He pulled into a pit. They looked at everything. It all looked somewhat fine. There was not oil anywhere. It all looked somewhat fine. Got through that section, he goes up for like the goat trail and start running in all those areas and like here's the Independencia and stuff. And at this point, all of a sudden he's like, hey, this is more than a clunk. It's getting really loud, violent. The front end's like eating itself. Like you can hear this. And eventually it starts getting to a point where he's like, hey, it's so violent over 80 miles an hour, we can't go over 80. So we're watching our gap get closer and closer. Toby Price is catching us, and we're like, oh man, this is not how we had planned. We have about 150, 100-ish miles left. So we're just trying to get through this point. We're like, oh man. And then we're watching them on the trackers, and eventually Toby gets to his bumper. And at this point, all this area, it had been raining all day. It stopped raining now, but so there wasn't much dust. And ultimately, Toby got by him just because he caught him. Bryce was just kind of trying to maintain, keep the truck moving forward. I can tell you our emotions and everything kind of took a lull. Everyone was kind of bummed, man. But, you know, we're like, hey, the race isn't over. There's still like 100 miles to go. Let's keep trucking. Bryce, you're doing great. Be smart. So Toby gets around us, and right away he puts a little bit of time on us. But then we're watching on the tracker, and then like I have a visual checkpoint where I see Bryce and them go by, and Bryce is only 20 seconds behind Toby. Man, this is kind of weird. Like I guess Toby's really just gone into cruise control, which is smart. That's what he should do. But at this point too, Luke McMillan, who had issues earlier in the day, is making a huge comeback from the back. He is making up a ton of time on these front two leaders. And we're like, hey, we gotta all keep moving forward, Bryce. Like, yes, right now we're sitting in second. Like, don't get too bummed because we need to still stay in front of Luke because he is coming up fast. Yeah, I see this visual checkpoint. Toby goes by and he's kind of cruising, whatever, and then Bryce is 20 seconds behind him. Bryce is super cruising. So I'm like, okay. All of a sudden, Toby's tracker stops moving, and you know, you're kind of like, oh, do we trust the tracker, And then on the radio, Bryce goes, hey, we just passed Toby. And we're like, what? Toby was stopped. So we're like, okay, just cruise, just keep maintaining. And it turns out Toby, they had a miscalculation or an issue in the pits. They actually ran out of gas, which is sucks for them. But they were still 50 miles from the finish at this point. So there was a big issue. But now Luke's coming from the back, and we still had a big time gap, but I'm like, don't cruise too much in case something happens. So he's cruising. He's like, hey, dude, this front end is just violent. It is like, he's like, it feels like the front diff is going to leave the car. I'm like, just get through the next 50 miles. And the next 50 miles, the problem is it's not like a smooth, graded road. It is technical. It's that same area where the Jose G's ranch I was talking about, and it's just miserable. So he's cruising through there. At this point, the stress is just, it went from we're winning the Baja 1000 to we're losing the Baja 1000 to now we're winning again, but the truck is falling apart. And so the stress, like the group chat, everyone's panicking, like just make sure everyone's like, every issue you could think of is coming to your head. Hey, make sure he does this, make sure he does that. And Willie, the Menzies team leader, is like, hey, deep breaths. I'm like, I know, I have to remind him, like, there's a VCP he could miss, that it's really tight circle. Make sure he hits that. And like, they're like, Oren, I like radio. Oren's like, I know, we got it. So, and yeah, then we won the Baja 1000. We ended up winning by 10.5 minutes. Yeah, it's crazy to see how it all played out at the end. Toby in the end, like he ended up getting like a VCP penalty too. So like it would have been really tight at the end there if he didn't, you know, if he didn't run out of gas, it still would have been really close. But in the end, we won the Baja 1000, which it's been several days, and I think in a lot of the videos at the finish line and stuff, you can see like I was in this like type of disbelief, but it was like the most peaceful, it's just this weight off your shoulders. You train so hard for it, you put so much effort into it, weeks and weeks, and then it kind of just like, and it was unreal. We went into, so like I walked through the timing area and everyone's like, you won. And at this point you're like, hey, I just need to, there's a timing trailer there's where the officials sit, and they have like, did you miss any VCPs? Did you speed? Did you this and that? And I knew I had sped a tiny bit. The speed limiter broke off a tiny bit. So I'm just like, that's what the people are running at me with cameras and stuff, and I was just like tunnel vision. Was just ignoring them all. I was like, I have to get to the penalty trailer. Get to the penalty trailer. The guy's like, hey, give me 15 minutes. He's like, get out of here. Then he calls me in like 2 minutes later. He's like, hey, you won the Baja 1000. But for us, this was, you know, a childhood dream. It was hard to believe that it was truly, we won the Baja 1000. So yeah, one of those wild deals that's, it's still so crazy to be able to add my name to the history books. You know, Baja 1000 overall winner is pretty incredible and just insane. So yeah, that's a long-winded version of the Baja 1000. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Be sure to like, subscribe if you like these. We'll have a bunch more videos from the Baja 1000 dropping as soon as we process all this video. It's going to be amazing. It's probably going to be our best video to date, so be sure to tune in, and we'll see you next year racing in Baja and in the States.